Hey guys, and welcome back to For Your Consideration. May the 4th be with you. It's May 4th. Star Wars. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to For Your Consideration. Today I'm going to be doing a Star Wars ranking video of the Star Wars franchise movies. Man, it really helps to have a script sometimes. So I'm going to be ranking the Star Wars movies from S rank to D rank. For your information, S rank is above A rank, so it goes S, D, B, C, and D. Did I say that right? No, S, A, B, C, and D. Did I say that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to be ranking the movies the way that I feel belong on this list. Keep in mind that this is my list, and this is very impromptu right off the dome. So whatever I put on this list, I might not be married to it. Maybe my opinion will change in 10 years, 5 years, who knows? But opinions change, things change, people change, whatever. So as of now, this is my list, this is my ranking, and I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible and give a brief reason why I love these movies and the reason why I put them in the rankings that they are. Some I love less than others, but keep in mind, I think I love Star Wars no matter what, even if they're bad. I just like being back in that world. So maybe I have a personal bias, but yeah, whatever. Doesn't matter. But like I said, this is impromptu. And yeah, I'm literally releasing, recording, and doing all this the same day. So, I don't know, cut me some slack, okay? Anyways, let's get into this. So obviously S rank, we'll start there with A New Hope. Oh my God, A New Hope. Of course. This movie is my favorite Star Wars movie out of the entire franchise, including all the spin-offs and etc. This is the pinnacle of Star Wars. It was not A New Hope at the time. At the time, it was just Star Wars when it was released in 1977. This movie is perfect. It introduced me to the concept of a hero's journey, and it introduced me to some of my favorite characters ever put to screen. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Leia. It's just that was the trio. That was what you wanted to be as a kid. You wanted to be these guys, and man, if you ever had a moment in your life when you were just daydreaming that something would just sweep you off your feet and take you on this swashbuckling adventure in space, this was the movie that all those daydreams came from. It's just, wow, perfect. So that's all I'll say about A New Hope. Leading into the next movie that was released, Empire Strikes Back. That is S rank as well. This movie, in a filmmaking perspective, Empire Strikes Back is perfect, and if anything, it takes the concepts in A New Hope, elevates them, makes the themes darker, the cinematography is way better, everything is just elevated and better. But my favorite is still A New Hope. I like A New Hope more than Empire Strikes Back. There's no way I can argue that objectively, but just in my brain, I love A New Hope more. And I can't come up with concrete reasons why, but I just think A New Hope is better. But Empire is better. Does that make sense? Please tell me that makes sense. Okay, but yes, Empire Strikes Back, it opens new questions, asks the characters new questions. It puts them up against things that they were afraid of at the very beginning of their journey. It makes them question themselves. It makes them question what's the goal? What's the purpose of this? And it really puts them at the end of the rope, at the end of the movie, and you have no idea what's going to happen next. And I think the modern equivalent of this movie is Infinity War. It's just, you leave the movie thinking, I don't know how they're going to get out of this, but I really hope they do, and I can't wait to see what happens next, which leads into Return of the Jedi. So Return of the Jedi, for me, I would rank at B. So my reason for this is because for a lot of people, Return of the Jedi is just that movie that keeps this trilogy from being perfect. And I would say for myself, I'll give it to Return of the Jedi for following up Empire Strikes Back. That's fucking ridiculous. That's like me following up a performance by Michael Jackson with me playing with a yo-yo. It just doesn't make sense, but I'm gonna give it my all, and Return of the Jedi does. And I think there are very great moments in Return of the Jedi that place it a lot higher than a lot of these movies that followed up after it, but there's just so much more rewatchability in A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. There's so much more that you want to go back and see, and there's a lot more development to the characters and a lot more questions asked in the previous two movies that this movie really doesn't do. This movie does feel like an extended toy commercial at times, and there are times at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie that shine, but not enough for it to necessarily stand out amongst all these others. So that's why I'm placing it as B. I do think that the last act of this movie has some of the most rewatchable scenes ever, especially the interaction between Luke and his father. It's just, mwah, you know, I love that scene so much, even though I did not think Vader was going to look like that. Whatever. Spoilers? No, it's not spoiler. Who cares? Anyways, that moves on to the prequel trilogy, the movie Phantom Menace. I am going to rank that. You like that noise? I don't either. Okay, I'm going to rank that at D. Yeah. Everyone was excited for this movie to come out. I think I was just turning 6 years old when this movie came out, and I remember the first time I watched it was not in theaters. It was actually on DVD or VHS, probably VHS. It was on VHS, and my buddy Austin introduced me to the world of Star Wars, and I didn't know what was going on, but this was how I was introduced to Star Wars, and for that, I thank it and I give it my heart and I give it my respect, because for some reason I stuck around long enough to be a fan to introduce myself to the original trilogy myself. And so, because of that, I am very torn for where I'm placing it, but it deserves where it is. It's a D. It's an F, if it could be. It is not a good movie. It's not well structured. The pacing is awful. It's slow at times where you feel like, man, maybe I could just leave and forget that this movie even happened. But there are also times where you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But then you think about it just a little bit and you're like, well, yeah, that was cool, but what was the point of that? And what I'm talking about is the action sequences in this. There are countless action choreography and things like that that kind of distract you from realizing, oh, this movie doesn't really have much to say. It's just, you know? It's talking about tax federations, it's talking about tariffs, it's talking about things that, as a child, which these movies are mostly aimed towards, what am I supposed to latch onto here? And do these concepts really matter? Is George Lucas trying to make a statement about the economy at the time? Like, what's going on here? And if he is, I think he's missing his point. And that's kind of the feeling you get out of walking out of The Phantom Menace. And besides just the hokey acting, the wooden acting that comes out of this, there are some cool performances from Ray Park as Darth Maul. But other than that, you're not missing out. It's kind of a shit show. Anyways, moving on to a bigger shit show, in my opinion, Attack of the Clones. I would put this as an F. Is it even possible to put this as G? I don't know. I just went to this website today. So I'm going to put this as a D right next to Phantom Menace, but I would personally put it below Phantom Menace. I think this movie is just an example of how you can build up anticipation and excitement for a movie as a follow-up to be better. There's a lot of times where I'm like, okay, the sequel will learn from the original, and from that will make a superior movie. And that's the hope with most movies when they get a franchise or when they get a sequel. But this movie is an example of not learning from its mistakes, but in fact taking those mistakes and saying, let's keep making those mistakes. And I don't know. There's some cool moments with Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. He is the shining light of the prequel trilogies. But man, it's just, you get more wooden performances from Anakin, played by Hayden Christensen. You get a lot of moments where you just feel like George Lucas doesn't really understand what made the characters in the original trilogy appealing, and doesn't understand how to write for actors, and he doesn't know how to direct actors. He doesn't know how to tell them how to perform these lines that he wrote. And on top of that, he's not giving them much to work with. The writing is very much matter of fact. It's, I love you, you love me, yes. That's it, you know. There's no nuance in it. There's no, hey, maybe the audience wants to fill in the dots and wants to fill in the gaps with kind of your writing. Maybe there's some, I don't know, some subtlety. No, none of that. It's all out the window. But I don't know. I like the Coliseum scene in the movie. Looking back at it, I look at it more fondly and like, oh, that's cute. Like, I look back at it like that, and I know that sounds really pretentious, but I just remember a more innocent time in my life, and because of that, I appreciate it. But if you were fresh to these movies and you watch them now with no idea what Star Wars was, you would probably not get a lot out of it. That's what I was trying to say. So yeah, just from that perspective and in terms of rewatchability, I dread going back and rewatching this unless I'm with a friend. That is the only way I'll watch these movies. So yeah, D. The next movie, obviously, is Revenge of the Sith. And I will put that as a C. I actually remember going to see this in theaters with my sisters and my dad. My dad was passed out, like immediately in the opening space battle of this. He was passed out, he was snoring. And I remember, even through that, I was just utterly entertained. I was like, wow, this is grabbing me right away. The space battle is really exciting. The CG looks fantastic for the time, and still till this day, it looks really great. And we get a little more development of Hayden Christensen. We get to see his dramatic chops just a little bit more. Ewan McGregor still carries the franchise on his back at this time. And we get to see a little bit more nuance from Natalie Portman, but not really. I know she's kind of in and out for this movie, but we get to see the luring of Anakin to the dark side. You get to see him kind of battle with the light side and the dark side just a little bit more. But the only thing that really crushes this movie and the way that it develops is that everything just happens so quickly towards the end. You feel like they're trying to rush towards getting Hayden, or goddamn, not Hayden, getting Anakin to become Darth Vader, that you feel like there was just so much missing, or that there was a whole nother movie between the second act and the third act that needed to be put there. And I guess that's what the supplementary the Clone Wars series is for. But it's just, as a movie, you need to tell a story. There needs to be an arc, there needs to be a clear pacing, and characters need to kind of have an understanding, or not characters, but the director needs to have an understanding of what the characters are, who they are, and who they're going to become by the end of the movie. And it just feels like Anakin's one person, then all of a sudden he's hit with a dilemma, and then he just turns a complete 180 into this evil maniac monster Hitler, space Hitler. It just doesn't make any sense. It really just drops the ball at the end. But man, that final battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and what Obi-Wan has to say is it's not the best writing, but Ewan's performance as Obi-Wan and his plea to Anakin, it's really gripping. Probably one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars, but I feel like with a different director at the helm, it would have been even better. But we got what we got, and I can't hate George Lucas for introducing Star Wars to my life. So kudos. So kudos to George. Man, I'm stuttering. Okay, so that leads me to the new trilogy. So this is, I guess, the sequel trilogy, as people would call it, because it's technically a sequel to the original trilogy. This takes place years after Return of the Jedi. That is Force Awakens, and I'm going to put that as an A. I think that this movie is such a nice return to form. It introduces us back to the world of Star Wars, but with new characters, even though they do pepper they do pepper in some of the old franchise characters that we love to see, but these characters have grown over time, and they're not just who they were back then in the original trilogy. They've developed, they've changed, things have happened since then, and because of those things that happened, they have become different people. And it's really, really interesting to see, not just Han Solo being Han Solo, the charming scoundrel. He's an older gentleman now, and he's had kids, or he's had a kid. He's fallen out of marriage. It's super interesting to just see a completely new perspective on a character that feels fresh, but also true to the world and the characters. And we also get to fall in love with Daisy Ridley as Rey. We get to fall in love with John Boyega. And Kylo Ren, who carries the entire sequel trilogy on his back. It's just, we are introduced to these characters. They're all compelling. The villain has depth. He's not just a clone of Darth Vader, but they make him someone who appreciates Darth Vader to the point where he's a fanboy. But they make it interesting. They don't quite laugh at him. He's compelling to watch. Adam Driver is fantastic. It's so great. And not only that, but the special effects in this still are just some of the best that I've ever seen in a sci-fi action film. So yeah, that's why I'm placing that as A. So that leads into the next movie, which chronologically, this right here, it's not going to make much sense, but it's Rogue One, which is a spin-off. It's a movie that takes place between, why am I blanking? Between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Sorry, this takes place within the same year, New Hope, but right before A New Hope, which literally leads into the first scene of A New Hope. New Hope, New Hope. I'm just going to keep talking. So Rogue One, it's a spin-off. It's Disney's way of saying, hey, I know that we have the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the original trilogy, but what happens? What are some of the stories that happens between, some of these connecting parts? How can we create a more fleshed out world? And that was Rogue One's attempt with how the Death Star plans were revealed to the rebellion. And because of that, I think that this movie, well, let me just rank it first. I would personally put this at a C. So the reason I put it at C, and a lot of people love Rogue One. They love Rogue One because Rogue One introduces us to a logical reason behind why we got the Death Star plans and why the Death Star had such a huge weakness. They add some logic to that, and because of that, it actually, it's really fun to watch and it's really interesting. And man, Gareth Evans, he directs this. So Gareth Evans, or is it Gareth Edwards? There's like too many Gareth directors. Whichever, Gareth, he directs this movie expertly. He has a way of really showing the scale and size of what Star Wars is, the ships, the tankers, everything in Star Wars. He knows how to emphasize the war in Star Wars. Like he shoots it so well, so expertly. It feels gritty. It feels bare knuckle. It's really exciting to watch when things are happening. But when things are not happening, and when it comes to just characters and character interactions, there's nothing there. It reminded me of the prequel trilogy, where there's just not a lot of development in the characters. I don't really care for a lot of them. And when sacrifices are made, which, with a movie with this kind of premise, those sacrifices have to be made. When those things happen eventually, I'm just not emotionally invested, and maybe some people were, but I just wasn't feeling it. And there were just some parts in the movie that just felt strange, and there's so many references to the other films in this movie that were really unnecessary, kind of just like, I don't know, it just felt like someone saying, hey, remember this? Remember these guys? Yeah, well, they're never coming back in the story again. We just wanted to show you, just to remind you that we're fans too. It just, But overall, the movie had so much to show visually, but just such wasted potential with a lot of the actors they grabbed for this movie, because I've seen them in other stuff and they're just fantastic in those things. But in this property, they kind of wasted Ben Mendelsohn. He's one of my favorite actors, but he just didn't have much to do in this. I mean, yeah. But that Darth Vader scene at the end was fucking amazing. But looking at it as a whole, I would much rather have a better spin-off movie or a better Rogue One movie than have one really cool Darth Vader scene in a okay movie. So that's my justification for why I'm ranking that as a C, which leads into the next movie, probably the most controversial Star Wars movie to date, which in my opinion doesn't deserve all the controversy. And I'll tell you why right after I put it where I'm going to put it. I put this as a B. Now, The Last Jedi. Now, some people think that this is the worst thing to ever happen. Some people say that this movie is worse than the prequels. Let me just tell you straight up, you're fucking wrong. That is not true by any means. This movie has a lot to say. Rian Johnson really puts a stamp on the Star Wars universe. He subverts expectations, sure. Yes, that's one of the things about this movie that a lot of people hate, is that you go into this movie after watching Force Awakens expecting some certain developments, some certain things to kind of be expanded upon, but those things never happen, because what he does is he flips those expectations. And yes, that gets tiresome at some points, but what he introduces the world, what he introduces with characters like Rey and with Kylo Ren and their interactions with each other, that chemistry that they have with each other, he follows up with that, and he introduces, hey, fuck the dark side, fuck the light side. What are we doing? Why are we obeying these laws that have been surrounding us for years? These century-old folks tales are like, why are we so married to this? Let's just say fuck it all and just do what we want. Let's rule the galaxy together. I'm really paraphrasing these things. But I think The Last Jedi is very misunderstood in a lot of areas, but there are parts of this movie where I'm like, well, that didn't need to be there. The whole Canto Bite scene was just unnecessary. The whole free the kangaroo horses thing was just not necessary. It was pretty boring. And Rose as a character, not as an actress. The actress is fantastic. She right away was very charming, but then the more that they kind of tried to give her more lines and add her story to the story, it just kind of bogged the movie down. I feel like they kind of wasted her. So no, not a fault on the actress, but yeah, Rose as a character was kind of just you know. And also John Boyega, oh my god, John Boyega as Finn in this movie did not really get all the shining moments that I think he deserved. He was the best in Force Awakens, but in this movie they kind of underutilized him as well. But man, seeing Mark Hamill return as Luke Skywalker was fantastic. I think he was one of the most compelling parts of this movie, and everything that they did with this character in the movie was, I think, perfect to me. I would love seeing a torn Jedi Master who has hidden himself from others, from his loved ones, because he's wallowing in shame. It's just a really interesting side to a character that you get to see. They're not just saying, oh, well, he's the new Yoda. It's a very different take, and I appreciated it for that. And so that's why I ranked this as a B, because I found a lot of parts, especially the throne room sequence, very, very fun to watch, very compelling, and got to see a side of Star Wars that I always wanted to see, but they did not venture in that very much in the follow-up movie. But I'm not going to be talking about the follow-up movie, Rise of Skywalker, because a movie came out right after that, a movie that I really love, unabashedly love and adore, which is Solo, a Star Wars story. I am going to rank oh man, I don't know about this. Fuck it, I'm gonna rank it an A. I'm ranking Solo, a Star Wars story, an A. I remember I went to go watch this at Cinnabar, a theater where they serve alcohol, and maybe that's why I like this movie so much. But I watched it again just to be sure. I love this movie. I really, really like Solo, a Star Wars movie. A movie that has everything working against it. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't work. But for me, I really enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought Alden Ehrenreich's portrayal of Han Solo was perfect. It wasn't an imitation. It was just the spirit of the character. I thought Donald Glover, for the most part, was really great. There were times where Donald Glover's imitation of Billy D. Williams' portrayal was just kind of a little bit graining. I felt like he's trying too hard to be that character rather than be a character. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I thought the villain was really fun, played by Paul Bettany. I thought his performance was so sick and twisted and really funny and weird. And I just really liked the structure of the story overall. I really like Woody Harrelson's character as sort of the mentor figure to Han Solo, kind of ushering him into the charming scoundrel role that he'll later play in the original trilogy. I just really like to see a fresh novice Han Solo. So he just doesn't quite have the it factor yet, but he's getting there, and I just really enjoy this movie. It charmed the pants off of me. Yes, the cinematography is pretty bad. There are times in this movie that's so dark and foggy, I had no idea what was going on, but I kind of got the general essence through the silhouette, so I was like, I'll forgive it for that. But I thought that everything in it was really fun. I really liked the Bacat, whatever the fucking card game was. I really enjoyed those scenes. I really like card playing scenes, even though I don't know anything about card games. I just really like watching them in movies, so that's why I really like Casino Royale. But yeah, all that stuff was great. It's just everything about that movie was just, to me. I don't know. Something about it just really grabbed me. So I feel like it's a really underappreciated movie. I think it's underrated. And I think that, no, it doesn't ruin Han Solo for me as a character, because I have the original movies. I'm not so married to the characters that I can't see different portrayals or see a different side of them. But I really thought the one thing I hated about that movie, if I had to choose something, was the introduction to how he got his name. I thought that was really dumb. Are you riding alone? Yeah, then you're Solo. That, still cringe thinking about it. Anyways, that leads up to the final movie of the Star Wars franchise so far. That is Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. I'm running out of time looking at my camera. The Rise of Skywalker. dude, I put that right next to Last Jedi as a B. Rise of Skywalker was a movie that I wanted it so bad to follow up with the themes that Star Wars The Last Jedi was leading up to. But this whole franchise, the whole sequel trilogy just felt like they didn't have a vision of what they were doing. It felt like, and which it was, like every movie had a different director, and every director was erasing what the last movie did to kind of supplement their own idea of what Star Wars is, and it just became messy. And this movie was an example of how do we tie up all these loose ends, and how do we conclude a trilogy, an almost impossible task that has been fucked up a little bit so far, which I'll admit is due to them not having a vision at the very beginning of making this trilogy. So yeah, Rise of Skywalker, man, it's I'm not going to talk much about it, but I will say that I enjoyed, for the most part, seeing Kylo's arc, seeing him kind of come to his own, being his own person, deciding not what fate or what came before him dictates who he's going to be, but because he feels this love and he's not going to deny it, and he feels the light side being drawn into him, and he knows that he can't deny that either. And just seeing his arc overall was worth the movie, was worth the cost of the ticket. So that's pretty much the best thing I'll say about this movie, but I'm not going to get into too much detail. But I do rank it as a B because it just kind of disappointed me overall, and it just left a mediocre taste in my mouth. So guys, that's my ranking of the Star Wars movies. If you want me to talk in more detail about them individually, I can do that. So please let me know in the comments below if you're interested in that. But if not, like always guys, I will see you later.